Hi, I would like to show you how to set the site view permission. The site view permission is really related to the front end of any site view, since it usually by default says set not allowed, and that is basically because we have the problem where that data is controlled by the global settings of the component. And unless you write some custom script to add that global settings to the database for permissions, it actually doesn't have those permissions set, and because it's not set, it's by default always set to not allowed. Now let me explain that on a code level to you. Okay, we'll use Summon Distributor, which is one of the demo components that is available. If any of you are interested in buying access to this demo component, it obviously has site views. So if we open the Options tab, you'll see there's a permissional tab, and if we search for site, you'll see there is category site access, plural, and category site access singular. There's also preacher site access and preachers, and series list, and sermon, and all these various site accesses, literally saying whether the public will have access. Now by default, as I said, it is set to inherit, and inherit will actually say not allowed. Now there's something that I've done to try and accommodate this problem in JCB. So let's close out here and look at some of the code I've done there. Okay, so we'll have to go to Component Builder and then to Components, and I'll open Summon Distributor. Then I will go to Settings and then Site Views. I click Add, and now you will see that we have here a value called default view. Now what the default view really is that's the view that the component will direct you to if you are accessing a view that you as a user don't have access to. So usually we would set the default view to not have an access control. So we'll say, okay, the default view doesn't have access control. That means it's actually open and public to all. And then we could explain on this view how to get access, for example, to the rest of the component. But because you could see in what user group the user is, and you can by that determine some messages. Okay, so that means whenever you have, obviously there can only be one default view. Even if you select more than one, the first one the compiler gets to will become the default view. The next one will be ignored. So there can only be one at the moment. It says that here, select only one. And so if you have an access for categories and it's not yet set, it will throw the user back to, for example, here, preachers. Now, what is the advantage of this? It simply negates the error page so that you don't get a loop where the permission just never gets resolved, so it just goes into a loop and it then crashes the site. This prevents that, but it obviously doesn't solve our permission structure completely, but it is at least a first step towards trying to resolve it. So you would say this is your default page, don't give the default page a permissional structure, so if any of the other pages is accessed, it will divert to the default page. And now the next step that we have to try and address this problem is some custom scripting that you can add which will show after installation. So let me show you some of that. The component where we actually have this shown is the demo component. So you can just open the PHP tab, and in the PHP tab you'll see that it has a queued message in the post-flight install blocks. Basically gets the factory, get application. First set the component global setting and the permissions in the options area, or the front end of the component will not work as expected. Please note that each view on the front end has access and permissions. So if you would like the public to access those views, they must be given the access and permission. And then this is just an info message that comes up basically after install. So that is another way that we've tried to help the user realize that he needs to add some. Now you can obviously change this into a link, become very fancy, or you could even add custom script here that updates the this component's permissional structure and actually adds the public to have access to the site views. These are some of the ways that we are trying to resolve the permissional restraints of site views. Now, yeah, let's look at this. I was saying earlier at the code level, so forgive me for taking so long to get. So here we have the access file open of Sermon Distributor, and if we do a search here, site, you see that it has the site access values set for the component. Now, when we look at the front end of the component, our opened categories, you'd see that here it is asking whether the user has that access, and then if it doesn't, it does a redirect, and it redirects to the default page. You see that? Now let's open the default page, and the ideal of the default page is that if the default page is not the site root, it will, if it cannot access the default page, it will actually add this error and then redirect to the site root, which being the website's home page. And so that's kind of how we're trying to prevent this permissional structure from interfering with your user experience. Now, if we go back to the component, the Sermon Distributor component, and we again open the site views, and this time I change it that this doesn't have access, and I actually save it that way. Go to the compiler, compile Sermon Distributor, and install. Okay, now let's go back to the code. Now you'll see that it doesn't have any of that checks in the preachers file, only in the category file. And it still redirects to preachers, which in effect means that this one will no longer give any errors, but it will show these errors, which relates to the fact that they cannot see the categories. Now, I think some of the advancements that we might still think on doing is maybe add a field to the component where the user can change these errors to show maybe a message of how to purchase access or something. Yeah, we could still look at that. You do realize that at this stage JCB does have the option to actually customize any section of code. So by using what is known as the custom code implementation. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that. Please go look and review those videos. They are on YouTube. where you can literally change this whole code block here and then use your own implementation upon these measures. Well, that is a quick demonstration or explanation on how to manage the different permissional structures for JCB regarding the site front end. So if you do not want that control, you can simply obviously just put it off. But I realize that most of you might want to add some custom scripting that adds permissions to the database for that component. That's a little bit beyond the scope of where JCB is at the moment. Although that is a nice to have, there are more pressing things that we'll focus on first. Anyway, thank you for watching.